Hey everybody, it's Paul with reporting live from my sofa. How's it going today? Y'all, today has been such a major, I'll say it again, day in the Brooke Skylar Richardson saga. So today's video, I'm just going to be talking about some of the closing arguments, going over just some of the key points that what stuck out to me, what didn't stick out to me, and that's it. So, without further ado, let's review! Okay, so they kind of tricked me up a little bit because Kraft went up to speak first to give the state's closing arguments. And she was really quick and to the point, and I was like, all right, yes, we've got to quit. This is going to go fast. But then after that, it all kind of went downhill, if you will. So let's just talk about a little bit of what jumped out to me. So, she goes right into the whole aspect of, first of all, she's saying, that Skylar went to the OBGYN. Getting the pills was a ruse. She wanted to really find out if she was pregnant or not. She goes over the reaction that Skylar had about bursting into tears. Nobody can ever know. The doctor telling her you have to come back, and she never comes back. And she basically just goes into, how she hid it from everybody. How there was these searches about how to get rid of a baby. She had the baby alone in her bedroom. She buried the baby in the backyard. Hid evidence in another location that has never been found or named or whatever. Then she goes back to the doctor, same doctor's office, different doctor, and her plan unravels. Now, essentially, this is where they hit heavy on, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but that evidence is just as strong. Basically, in a circumstantial case, the circumstantial evidence is just as strong, as like other evidence would be, scientific, whatever, witnesses, things of this nature. And I kind of disagree with that part, because I think that a lot of times that this is where, and not even just this case specifically, but when we see wrongfully convicted people, a lot of circumstantial evidence, it does make it look like, how wrong can it be? But it ends up being wrong. So then, she goes off another list about, not having any plans and how she doesn't say anything. All of this is geared towards Skylar wanting to move on with her life, conceal the baby, kill it, do whatever they say she did, and being able to go to college and have this boyfriend and the whole 9 yards. Now, a huge part that the state is hanging on are things that Skylar said. And so a couple of the things they bring up is I think I might have killed her when I squeezed her with her suffocation. She was in the toilet, maybe she hit her head, drowning. Things of this nature. So a lot of what they're trying to convict her on comes down to her words, but where I think their argument fails is that if you go with one part of the wording that Skylar says and negate the other part, then it goes both ways. So it's almost like this never-ending yin-yang type situation with her words that just leave you running a tailspin. And there's really just no definitive proof that she did or did not do something to the baby, that the baby was or was not born alive. And so that's what makes a case like this so tricky and so interesting at the same time. Now, she goes over the charges and breaks these down and goes into them as to why they did it. There's aggravated murder. Now, a huge part of that is the age of the child, involuntary manslaughter, and this is essentially for not providing aid to the child. Child endangerment kind of goes right along with that. Gross abuse of a corpse. And that gross abuse of the corpse is, I'm going to read out the instructions here. Abuse of a corpse is to recklessly treat human corpse in a way that would outrage reasonable community sensibilities without being authorized by law to do so. And that we'll get into in a little bit because I find that very interesting. So now these charges could put her away for life. So this is very serious. And so essentially she goes back over each of these charges and talks about how they can find her guilty of these. And as I'm listening to them, I'm just kind of like, some of these are a stretch here. And, so it is kind of what it is on some of them. But then, essentially she rounds the whole argument out with, it's clear from these statements that Skylar never had any intention of having a daughter, a baby. They finish it off by showing some of the text messages that Skylar sent to her boyfriend about the perfect happy life that obviously didn't involve, the baby in that. And so there was that. So then the defense gets up there. And I'm going to have to say the defense was up there for a hot minute. I kind of started wandering off a little bit and doing some stuff eventually. But it was interesting what they did. So, they start right in on the bones. Like, look, the state came in here and they know this isn't true and they're still trying to say this. They're still trying to tell you this. I feel like the bones were a real sore point for the state in this case. And I mean, they're bringing stuff up like, look, even their own doctor said that this is silly, it's impossible. You can't light a baby on fire with a lighter. And essentially he's like, why they do this? Because if you have reason to doubt what she said about cremation, then you have reason to doubt the things the detectives told her to say about signs of life, and they make sure to say the detectives told her to say. So I thought that was interesting, because remember in the opening statements how signs of life was a big thing, and you see now why that it is. Now he brings up how they didn't even put the lead detective on the stand, how they hid the fire marshal report, and the judge actually interrupts there and he tells the jury to disregard that part, that the fire marshal report has nothing to do with it. They can't consider that. It's not part of the evidence, basically. Now, the defense makes sure to let the jury know, hey, look, just so you know, I'm only allowed to speak this once, so don't think I don't have anything else to say when I don't get back up there after the state comes back up and speaks again. He says that y'all have the power to start to destroy or start the process of healing. I think that's a little much to put on their shoulders, even though, I mean, it's true. That's obviously the jury has that case, but it's a little bit like, He goes into your verdict is forever. Most verdicts are never overturned. And there's a big objection to that. It's sustained. Now, one thing that I thought was really interesting that he did, that I really liked for this, is he then went into some of the jury instructions and he basically broke things down into a very digestible way, that, very layman terms type thing. So he highlights, burden of proof, and he goes into like the highest burden of proof is in the scales of justice is a criminal case when you're taking somebody's liberties away. He goes into reasonable doubt. I mean, there's so much information about reasonable doubt, because in these cases, I mean, it's always like well, what is reasonable doubt type situation, and we'll get into here in a second what he said about that. So the live birth instructions, basically she can't be found guilty of things that she did while she was pregnant with the baby, or not seeking prenatal care. So he shows this burden of proof chart that he made, and essentially I'm kind of looking at it over here. Essentially it has these varying levels, and there's a big blue bar with a bunch of questions or statements next to it. For example, proven stillbirth. I think it is highly unlikely there was a live birth. I think it is less than likely there was a live birth. Live birth is likely. Live birth is highly likely. All of those things, he says, are not guilty. The only way they can come back with a guilty is to say definitely live birth beyond a reasonable doubt. So essentially, and I mean, that's the thing, I mean, it all comes down to that. And it was very, very interesting that he did this, because it literally, to me, I was like, okay, these are probably all of the possibilities that are going on, because that's what so many of us have talked about. They were all kind of like, well, I think it was born alive, or I don't think it was, or this or that or the other, or things of this nature. And so he made it very digestible here, I feel. Now he also uses the example of, if you had a box with a cat and a mouse in it, it's sealed, you seal it, you walk away, no one's messed with it, you come back, you open it, and the mouse is gone. Well, it's pretty much beyond a reasonable doubt that the cat ate the mouse. But he says, what if you came back and there was you don't know what happened to it, there was a hole in the box and the mouse was missing? Well, is it possible that the mouse chewed his way out? Is it possible that, the cat chewed a hole and the mouse got out? Is it possible that the cat ate the mouse? There's a reasonable doubt as to what exactly could have happened. And so he breaks these things down like that, which again, I just think is really smart when, especially the defense, makes it that simple for a jury to think. Now he goes off into other little things too about, never cutting the umbilical cord, doesn't really even know what it is or does. How she goes back to the same OBGYN that her aunt works at. So that was one thing a lot of people, at some point it came out that her aunt worked at this place. And so that brings up a whole other slew of questions. But one side's trying to say, well, she went back there trying to hide this, but the other is saying her family worked there. Why would she go back if she didn't feel that she had done anything wrong, basically? Now, he also goes into more about how their own doc said there's no live birth. During the interview where Skylar says not alive 30 times or no fire 17 times, talks about her using a marker on the grave. And then he goes in about how the tampering with evidence charge is gone. He goes back to the beginning where the state was essentially saying this isn't a science case or a medical case or whatever, and they're saying, the defense is saying, well, yeah, it is. And now he's saying, well, that's because it doesn't fit with their narrative. He goes into all the things that the state wants you to ignore, like the police report, the media, references to fire. They want you, and especially they want you to ignore common sense about lighting the baby on fire. Now, he also goes into the whole thing about how his own wife was pregnant and there's complications and they almost lost the baby. And, it almost makes you wonder if that's where this, kind of connection to this family comes from. And he goes into the public arena of, well, because Skylar didn't mourn the way that people didn't want her to mourn, she's been, slandered in the media and all this stuff and whatnot. So he goes on for a while, and again, he was up there for quite some time. And honestly, I thought that there was at one point, because I was talking to some people on our Discord channel, and I was like, he should just end it right here and show that chart one more time. The chart was so powerful and made it so simple of, here's the questions, this is what you can say, thank you, have a nice day, would you like fries with that? So, he could have wrapped it up, but it was, definitely good. So then that, again, so the state gets up to do their, rebuttal or whatever. And he starts in, now it's a gentleman prosecutor, I can't remember his name, but he starts in, he's like, shortly after murdering her daughter, she sent elated text messages to her mother about her belly being back. And these are, when we saw these, it is kind of like, oh my gosh. It's definitely, but then when you get a little bit of context, it's still shocking. I can't say it's not. And then he shows a duck face selfie, and I'm just like, oh my young ladies with this duck face. When they showed that, I was like, it's never a good look, especially if you've just done an event like this, because apparently they're saying that this picture was taken that same day. But he goes into kind of humanizing the baby Annabelle, and saying things like she had hair and this, that, and the other. Now, he talks about some of the defense tactics about, the whole 10-week difference in the size of the baby. And he goes into the aspect of, look, she had the perfect chance to tell her mother when her mother got the email about her being pregnant and confronted her about it via text. And he uses all of this to kind of show that, look, Skylar had no plans to tell anyone. Now, he goes back into the growth restriction, and I was like, oh, no. I was like, I can't. Y'all, I was like, I can't. The word growth restriction and fundal height, I'm done. I'm done. States again how this was, the growth restriction was determined about just using one measurement, which is impossible. He mentions how the defense's expert witness said that Brooke said the baby was really white when actually she only said it was white. And I was like, really? Are we pulling at this straw? He goes into how the defense witnesses only pick and choose things that fit their narrative. But both sides do that, in my opinion. We see that all the time. So, that's kind of what it is. I just felt like this case, was kind of exaggerated with that. Now, he talks about false confessions and about how you have to look at all the circumstances around the crime, not just the confession. And he says they never hid the burning aspect. He rounds his argument out by talking about how Skylar fit the common traits in mothers who kill their infants. And, she met like 15 points in these studies for women who kill their children within the first 24 hours. So he goes on for a while, and again, his testimony, the defense kind of wore me out, and then I was like, I'm done. I can't even with these people. So that was it. And, that was it. So I am going to go ahead and wrap this video up. That was the closing statements, my little, closing statements in a nutshell. I hope everyone's doing great. I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me through this trial. We're going to be picking the next one out soon. And obviously I'm going to be doing my verdict video about that. And that's it. So I appreciate it, and we will talk to you later, Sofa Squad.